Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light.
Well, everybody, it's that time of day again. Grab yourself a pint, pull up a chair, because it's time for another episode of the Soul Sessions. Of course, with your host, as always, Soul. But with me today, somebody who's got the three most dangerous names in UK wrestling: HCC, Helen Charlotte Campbell, as well as the Pride Up Scramble winner as well. So, quite congratulations. Well, Helen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Hello.
No, absolute pleasure. Now, of course, Helen, what I do with every guest, every guest has a story and every story has a beginning. Every story for yourself will be, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
Oh, gosh. When I was a kid, WCW used to be on Channel 5, and we'd watch that as a family. So there'd be WCW, I think it was called Worldwide Summit. I don't know. I didn't know at the time. It was just WCW to me. I was 5. I didn't care. So that for a bit. We never really watched WWF because my dad thought it was crap. That's his exact words. This is a load of crap. That was my dad. He was a fan of like British wrestling back in the day and stuff like that, like ITV wrestling and stuff. So it was all a bit crap to him, but I think he had a soft spot for Goldberg. So it was WCW. I kind of fell out with it. Well, I didn't fell out. It's just, the boom stopped and I was still a kid. So I went with trends until I was a teenager. When I was about 12, I played SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I loved the game. And I wanted to start watching wrestling again because of it. And about a year later, I started training. So, yeah, that's those few years me as a fan. Everything else is been since I started, I guess.
Fascinating to see as well, and I love that as well with wrestling. It's the watching element with the family. Around the TV set, you get to have that enjoyable. You get a takeaway, and you enjoy some bit of content at the night. But obviously, we're seeing with wrestling, it's shifting from the television set to streaming. WWE here in the UK, all its content's going to Netflix. AEW have announced they're going to HBO Max as well as streaming on television. Helen, do you feel like with wrestling moving away to streaming, it could be the end of the era for TV deals and all that, and how wrestling is presented on television?
I mean, probably, but I don't pretend to know or honestly care about that. I am very much like, wrestling is important. It's important to present wrestling as a TV show and as something that people want to watch and follow. But the medium that it plays through doesn't bother me so much. I just want to play. I just want to be me. I want to wrestle. If I'm asked to do something character-wise, I want to do that to the best of my ability. If you're asking me about TV ratings and deals and all that, I am not going to pretend to care. I do apologize. I just don't. When it streams, it'll be easier to watch because because I've got the network, but it'll be easier to watch Raw on Netflix than the network, and hopefully it has all the same content as the network, because the network is impossible to browse. It's a terrible streaming site. So the content's great, but finding stuff on there is a nightmare. So hopefully that all gets migrated over to Netflix, which is a much better user experience. But that's about as far as I care about it. To me, can I watch the wrestling? Good, we're fine.
Hey, absolutely, Helen. I agree with you. The W Network in its current state ain't the best. I can't go back and watch the classics of 205 Live. Like, all the video players are destroyed. I can't watch NXT UK sometimes because it's not updated to modern standards, and that's just a shame that we can't access all this great past wrestling. But you mentioned, obviously, the Netflix could be a great accessibility option for people to get into wrestling as well, because Netflix is so wide stream as well. Now, I wonder for yourself, Helen, obviously, you talked about the TV's ratings there, and I hope that this whole malarkey of the TV ratings, everybody debating which show's better and all that, finally puts to an end with the TV streaming deals, obviously with Netflix and HBO Max. Do you think fans that fixate on the TV ratings of whose company's doing better are more harm to wrestling than good?
Okay, so I don't really follow online conversations about wrestling. I don't care. I watch AEW, I watch WWE, I watch a lot of wrestling, because I like to study wrestling and stuff like that. But I mean, you see them pop up on memes sometimes, but I don't follow any of those accounts. They just show up, and I don't care. I'm sorry, this kind of direct, yeah, I don't care about that kind of thing. I'm sorry, I don't have
Yeah.
any real answer to give. I don't care.
Right. There it is. Don't worry. Indeed. Absolutely. But I find it fascinating there that you, like, I think our minds of how we watch wrestling might be a bit different. You watch it to study it, while some people may watch it as a form of entertainment. I would love to know, like, when you watch a match or something like that, how does your mind process, like, as a studying element for it? What aspects are you really watching to study it?
Okay, so usually the first time I watch a match, I'll just sit and enjoy it, because that's the most important thing. You know, a match is there to tell a story, to entertain people, and if I wasn't capable of viewing it in that way, that would hurt my ability to perform and to, it'd hurt my ability to entertain people if I wasn't able to be entertained by wrestling anymore. So it's not that I'll just study, but I might then go, oh, I really like that match, and then go back and rewatch it a couple of times, or I'll go on the network and find old matches. Honestly, when it comes to modern wrestling, I usually watch the pay-per-views or PLEs, what they're called now, and I'll watch indie stuff and I'll watch a bit of Japanese stuff. But the majority of the wrestling I watch is like older matches, you know, stuff I've heard. Oh, that sounded like like it was a really good match. This obscure '80s match, you know, from AJW or something. So like the majority of what I'm actively watching is older stuff, and that usually when I'm watching that, I'm studying, or again, if it's a first time view, I will just enjoy the match, but then I'll study afterwards if I really liked it and stuff like that. Or even like matches you don't like that much, you can learn a lot just from watching loads and loads of wrestling, regardless of the quality, because you can learn from mistakes as well as successes and things like that. I just really like watching wrestling. I like wrestling. Again, the wider discussions around it don't interest me beyond just like how to get better at wrestling, and I sound like such a nerd, but that is what it is. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's such great about it. You can get that visual learning from wrestling as well. You mentioned watching old matches, obviously, AGBW as well. Was there a particular old match you got recommended and you watched it and thought, yeah, this is the gold standard for learning. I love this and I can't wait to sink my teeth into learning about this match?
It's kind of a weird way of putting it, because it's not like I'll learn about the match. I'll just watch it a few times and take things from it. Like, I've got this. If you were to ask me what match I rewatch the most, it's the same boring answer every wrestler gives, and that's one of the boring answers that they give, and that's Eddie and Ray from Halloween Havoc, because of the storytelling in that match. Like, they do things that I don't do, either because I can't or it doesn't suit my style. But to me, it's not always about that, you know. Like, the way they structure that match and they tell that story is, to me, what makes it. Like, the amazing moves you see in it, and they are like that match is very special in that regard as well, obviously. But the reason that's so fondly remembered, in my opinion, is because those great spots, those great moves, and beautiful sequences were put in a match that tells a compelling story. Like, from the beginning, you've got Eddie threatening to rip the mask off, and the Rey Mysterio comes up on him, and like just little things like the way like Ray goes for the fake out dive, Eddie rips his feet off the apron, he bumps on and then out to the outside. They have a bit on the outside. Just the way everything flows into each other is what makes that match so memorable, in my opinion, as well as the amazing movements and spots and stuff like that.
Hey, fair point indeed, and that's a really loved match as well. People love to rewatch it and buy the figures and just the imagery of that match as well. Obviously, Halloween Havoc. We're currently in October, spooky season. Everybody
Yeah.
loves the spooky season. Just works absolutely well. But something you mentioned, obviously, in the beginning of our wee discussion here was "Here Comes the Pain," one of the greatest SmackDown games on the PS2 back in the day. But I think it shows a shift as well for video games and wrestling as well. The ultra realistic element of it, not much as the arcadey moment. We've had some arcadey game styles, obviously, with AEW Fight Forever, but there's that big shift of obviously 2K and their modern realistic take of video games. If you still play the video games, Helen, I'd love to know your thoughts on that shift from arcade style to realistic.
I don't.
Oh,
I've not played a WWE. Well, I think I downloaded one a couple of years ago and played it briefly, but I don't know. I don't have as unless it's some handheld that I can play on my phone, like a Pokemon ROM on my phone. I don't really play games that much anymore. I mean, I've got a Switch, and I'll sometimes dip into a bit of Zelda or something like that. But like when I was a teenager, I'd dedicate hours to one of those games, like Here Comes the Pain and stuff like that. But as an adult, it's just, yeah, if I'm going to play a game, I'm going to play like a good game. I'm not just going to play a game because it's a wrestling game. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to play like
yeah.
a Zelda game or, Dark Souls, something that's just a really good game in its own right and has nothing really to do with my outside interests, because
Mm.
often with games, I mean, there's been great wrestling games. Here Comes the Pain, No Mercy on the Nintendo 64, but the majority of wrestling games aren't up to that standard of just great games, you know what I mean? So I'd rather just play a great game if I'm going to take time out of my day to do it. So I
Yeah.
can't really comment on the 2K games. I think I've played one briefly a couple of years ago, and that's it. Sorry, I do
Well,
apologize.
no, fair dues indeed, Helen, as well. And you mentioned all the Souls games there, and I really like the Souls games, but I really like Bloodborne as well. And I think it's a bit shame that there's never been a sequel to that. I mean, why do you think there's never been a Bloodborne sequel? Is it people don't like the development or the theming? I love that Victorian Gothic theming, and I feel like it's a missed element.
I mean, it's a good game. I liked it. We've got Bloodborne. Again, we're getting into the weeds of like the business behind it and why there's not been enough. I don't think about that kind of thing.
Mm.
I know what good games are and what games I love, but I don't know much about the business behind them. I don't like. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, it's- Like, Helen, obviously, I love to ask as well. Obviously, I always say once a fan's always a fan, but you were the fan that take the extra step getting into the squared circle yourself.
Hmm.
I'm very fascinated about how wrestlers explore, obviously, the UK indie scene because it's been very changing. You hear back in the day, there was maybe one school down in England. And now, current day, we've got promotions everywhere, every nook and cranny from the tops of Scotland to the bottom end of England and Ireland and Wales. For yourself, Helen, what was it like navigating the UK independent scene?
I mean, I was a kid when I started, so back then the big promotion was FWA, and a lot of the wrestling schools, including where I trained at Future Shock at the time, were FWA affiliated, and I never really branched out until like I was like a young adult. When I started, like I had my first match when I was like 15, wrestled for a bit until I was like 16, 17, took a year out to finish uni off, and then came back in my early 20s. And it wasn't until I came back in my early 20s really where I wrestled anywhere other than Future Shock. Because as a kid, before then, it was just Future Shock. To me, I knew GPW was about because a lot of the people who wrestled at Future Shock also wrestled at GPW. I knew about FWA because that was the big place where everyone was trying to get to at the time. And Alex Shane would come and train us sometimes and always big up the FWA and stuff like that. So I was very aware of that. But then I went away for a year, came back, was another character, and then I started to branch out a little bit and worked other places. So we're talking at this point early 2010s ish. So on the run up to, or maybe the beginning of like the boom period, not financial boom period, but that time when like Progress and ICW were getting massive by British indie standards. And so the main thing was like where we were working to was changing. Like FWA was dead by this point, or at least on its last legs. I can't remember exactly. I think it kind of went out like a whimper, if I recall correctly. And that's how I had one PW as well, and that keeps trying to come back and failing. But yeah, so the main thing was like you had the boom period just starting, and these new different promotions that were the big places you wanted to get to, and as someone from the Northwest, it all felt a bit distant, that because you had Progress down south and ICW in Scotland and everyone else. So but I did branch out a bit. I did some wrestling in Wales, went to Stoke, did wrestle for Progress once. I did a lot of traveling around. I don't really know how you describe it. Like today, it's a lot more social media based. I hate social media, by the way. Back then I didn't use it so much. Now I don't know if it was a case of you didn't have to use it so much because right now I'm more successful than I was back then. So maybe the reason, maybe a part of that is the fact that I'm willing to use social media now in a way that I wouldn't really enjoy doing back then. But yeah, it's obvious, like, as social media has become more important, that this is where we're getting ourselves seen by both promoters and by fans, at least initially. And that's probably going to change again soon with X, about to kick the bucket most likely, and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm not good at all these social trends. I prefer the in-ring stuff, which makes me sound dead boring, I'm sure. But but yeah, the reliance on social media is probably the biggest change over time. I just probably spent about 10 minutes just to get to that point, I suppose. And again, the places we're working towards are different. Today you would, it's your Rev Pros, your Progresses, etc., etc., etc. Back then it was the FWA and stuff like that.
Yeah, very points indeed. I love the point you make on social media as well, and I completely agree with you on that point. I don't like X. I stay off X. I think X is a waste of time. But I feel like as well, while social media is good, obviously you get the connection with such a wide audience, you get to meet people from a wide ranges of life. There is a dangerous element to it, and I've heard from female guests I've had on the show that have stated that they always have to take sometimes even classes on how to manage their social media profiles, because sadly there are weirdos out there, and it sucks. It's a shame that you have that element of the fandom out there as well. Helen, for social media and its current state, obviously with that aspect of it, is there any advice you maybe give to some wrestlers about the navigating social media and how to protect yourself?
I can't say I'm good at that. I do my best. So I always, the way I do it is, well, you made a point about creeps. I block them immediately. That's not going to be enough. That's not going to be enough as you get more successful. Like, I'm doing quite well for myself at the moment, but I'm not like got the social media following as some of the other people. So, I get creeps, probably don't get as many as them. You know what I mean? But like, what were we? Oh yeah, using social media. Yeah, I hate it too, but make sure you're getting your footage up there. Make sure you're sharing all your matches on all your platforms. I hate Twitter, but if someone shares my match on Twitter, I'm going to quote tweet it and I'm going to push it because I want people in that building to watch the match. I want anywhere that books me to do well in ticket sales so that they can continue booking me. So every time there's a match, I'll promote it, I'll quote tweet it, I'll share it as a story on Instagram. Those are my two main advertising social medias for me. Other people use things like, I've got a TikTok. I feel I'm too old for it. I do try and put stuff on there, but I'm not very good at that. I'm sure there are people much better at that than me. But I'm not really the person to ask about social media advice. I do kind of hate it. I just make sure I'm always getting my footage up there as soon as I can. Once I receive the footage, the second I've got time to go edit it, I'll go edit it. I might do it on the day. It might take a couple of days, but it's always as soon as possible. And then once it's edited, I just shove it out there. I want people to see it, and I'll always pin like more recent stuff that I'm proud of, that I want people to see first thing, that kind of thing. So it's, for me at least, it's just about getting my footage out there and getting my matches shared and stuff like that. I'm sure there are people who are better at social media than me with much better advice. I know your Matt Cardonas and all that are like, you got to be posting 6 times a day, bam, 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 bam. And I am not capable of that right now. I probably should try and get better at it. But that is not the level I'm at when it comes to social media,
Yeah, we all need our patience, and it's like, I could post 6 things at a time, but I was like, I do like to relax and enjoy other things, patience and all that. But obviously, I think like with the UK scene right now, there's so many great aspects of it, and one company indeed obviously is TNT Extreme Wrestling. I've had the TNT champion Tate Mayfair's on the show, and he sings the company's praises as well. And Helen, you've had obviously pretty great recent success with the company as well. I want to know what your first experience was like, obviously entering TNT Extreme Wrestling.
My first experience was many years ago. I had a one-off match with Sean Only there, like 2015, 15, something like that. But I barely remember it. It was ages ago. So since coming back, I mean, the first EFFY's Great Gay Brunch in the UK. When I was put in that Rumble, that was only my third match back after transitioning. And I knew some of the people who work in TNT, which is why I feel I was put in that Rumble match, even though they'd not, you know, the new character hadn't really made a name for itself yet or anything like that. But my spot in the Rumble was good. I chucked 3 people out. I looked strong. I think my performance was good and it made an impression. So I'm very, very thankful for that. You know, I then got bookings off that match, you know, which is just a bit in a Rumble, you know, so that's kind of crazy to me, you know, that my little 2-minute spot where I powerbombed someone and lariated someone got me more bookings, but that's how wrestling works sometimes. So that's fantastic. They gave me the opportunity to wrestle Dark Sheik, which was really cool, and got me on like the Times website or something. I think it was on CNN's website as well, like just a photograph, but you know, it was still cool for it to be on there. And it looked good on my social media, so we're going back to that. But then more recently, like be back for the second Rumble, and then the night after with the briefcase match, and the reactions I got there were just fantastic. I like very thankful for it, you know. I was very, I'm aware that audience is one that is the niche I'm kind of playing to in a way. But I did think about my character and how I can play to that niche, and who I am, and what makes me different to all the other queer wrestlers. And that weekend helped me to feel that, you know what, this is paying off. So again, very thankful to TNT for that, and I'm very thankful for TNT for allowing me to cash in the briefcase. And in November, I'm going to kick Lucy Sky's ass and win that title. So you should definitely come to No Limit on November 30th. Hopefully this airs before then. Buy a ticket, watch some wrestling.
Well, I'll make sure that there's right before then, and they can see live in color of you kicking Lucy Sky's arse. But you know what? Before then, obviously, Helen, you are quite a history maker. You've done quite historic things, obviously, within the UK wrestling scene. And you mentioned the Dark Sheik. It was TNT versus GCW, and it also got showcased in the Times as well. You know, quoting from the Times, you know, it was a battle out in Liverpool. The event pitted UK wrestlers from TNT versus US wrestlers from Game Changer Wrestling, and it was believed to be the first singles match between binary trans women in the UK. Quoting from the Times there. Historic there. And, you know, for myself, congratulations for that moment, Helen. To know that you, I'd love to know, obviously, having that history-making moment that you've done something so historic, not obviously just for the wrestling community, for obviously the LGBT community as well. How does that feel for you to be that history-making moment?
So on social media, I've obviously got to post it and go, look at me, I've done this cool history-making thing. Follow me on my socials so I can get more bookings. But in real life, it's a bit, you know, it is what it is. I had a match. It's historically significant, but I struggle to talk about it and be like, yeah, look at me, look how cool I am, because it's only what it is by technicality. The first match between transgender people was at Pro Wrestling Eve in the UK, was at Pro Wrestling Eve in November 22 between Camille Hansen and Max the Impaler. That was the first, again, to my knowledge, the first match between transgender people in the UK. I wrestled Steph Sterling earlier in that same year when I wrestled Sheik. And the only reason that's not considered it is because Steph is technically non-binary. Even though she presents as a transgender woman most of the time, she is non-binary. So the Sheik match is what it was as a technicality. But of course, you got to go on Twitter and be like, yeah, look how important this is. Look how important I am. Follow me on social media. I hate social media, but follow me anyway. So yeah, maybe I'm just a bit bashful about it. I understand that it is important, and that it does mean something to people. But I I just want to be recognized for my in-ring stuff. I mean, that's kind of been a theme today, but it's most of what I care about. You know, I care about the community. Don't get me wrong. I care a lot about the community, but it's less about me having historic matches and more about the fact that it's cool that there's so many more trans people in training now. It's cool that there are other trans wrestlers in this country. Like, when I started, I was, you know, afraid to admit I was bisexual, let alone coming out as trans. The first person who was openly queer I met in wrestling was my friend Mark Adams, and he's a pioneer in my opinion. You know, he was out as a gay man in like late 2000s, early 2010s. You know, he was out before I was out. You know, there are lots of people who were out before I was out. Like, I only came out as a transgender woman in terms of wrestling when I came back in 2020. Well, I came back to shows in 2023. I came back to training in 2022. You know, like the entire previous run of my career was as just presenting male. You know, it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. I feel weird about being held up in this way. A bit bashful about it, if I'm honest. I recognise the importance of it, but I don't want to get a big head and an ego about it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, of course. And if I may, I feel like you don't want to be solely identified as that. You want to be also identified as yourself as a wrestler. It's a great accolade to have, but you also want to be identified as somebody with your in-ring work, your achievements, your accomplishments, but not solely to that achievement. Is that how I would correct it? Like how I view it?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I'm not blind to certain things. I'm aware some of my successes are due to being openly trans. You know, I have a niche audience now that's built in. The reason my style sticks out so much is because it's different within the context of queer wrestling. You know, it's also different within the context of women's wrestling, so it works in both of those ways. But like, yeah, I don't want to be all arrogant and act like there's not, you know, there's the only thing I'm starting to gain any traction for is because I'm such a good wrestler, because I'm confident in my ability, but I'm not blind to the fact that, you know, there are other aspects that have led to me getting more success now than I did in the past and things like that.
Absolutely. Okay. Fair point indeed as well. Now, obviously, I've mentioned with the UK scene, we've got great characters and great wrestlers. And somebody I know you faced in the past, I think, is quite phenomenal as a wrestler, is obviously Harley Hudson, who was successful in the TNA Gut Check. I'm quite fascinated. And what's it like wrestling Harley? Because I can imagine it's quite an intense match against her.
Oh, she's a great wrestler. I love wrestling Harley. You know, great worker. You know, has a immediate connection with the crowd, which makes always makes your opponent's job easier. You know, like one of my first matches back, I challenged her for the Future Shock Women's Championship, and going in, the last thing I'd done is like been a heel. So it was weird that it was like this heel dynamic, but because of the way Harley is with her audience and the way she plays to it, by the end of that match, I was thoroughly embraced as the face of it, and you know, I'm confident in my wrestling and how cool it looked and the story that we told and the way we did that. But a huge part of the reason that match worked, despite the kind of awkward setup, was because Harley's so good when it comes to like working the crowd and the connection, either, you know, positive or negative, that she creates with them.
Very true and point indeed. And she's a phenomenal wrestler. And hey, she was great in that TNA Gut Check. I kind of want to see her against Jordan Grace. I think that would be a stellar match. But I mean, what about yourself, Helen? Is there a particular matchup you like to see Harley have in TNA?
They've recently kind of shook up their roster, haven't they? Well, I say shook up, a bunch of people left for reasons. I mean, Jordan's your obvious choice, as a fantastic wrestler that she is. Who else is there at the moment now? That a bunch of, I was going to say Giselle Shaw, but she's not there anymore. Gail Kim's not an active wrestler. It's been a few months since I've fully caught up with TNA.
Hey, fair points. I mean, there's people there. Obviously, you know, former guests of this show, Danny Luna's there, Zaya Brookside's there, former Zaya Lee, who was in WWE, is there now. hey, the world's her oyster, and I'm sure she'll make great
Yeah.
opponents with anyone in that company.
Mm.
Absolutely fun.
Absolutely. I mean, she's a fantastic wrestler, and she's the kind of wrestler who's going to translate very, very well to television, in my opinion. Like she's got the in-ring stuff down great, but she's such a big character and is so likable when she's the good guy. So easy to hate when she's the bad guy. She is perfect for TV. There's, I figured she was going to win the gut check. Like, that sounds good saying that in hindsight. But when she mentioned she was going to go for it, I was like, yeah, you're a really good chance, So yeah, I'm glad she did it. I'm glad she won because it made me feel right,
Hey, that just shows you've got an eye for talent, Helen. So we can believe your eye and who you see. We know they're the future stars. Now, of course, Helen, a big thing coming up for you, obviously, we touched upon it earlier. You against Lucy Sky, obviously, for the TNT Women's Ignition Championship. But, of course, we have to, a bit before then, obviously, the Pride Up Scramble, obviously, you won that briefcase. I do love to know about, obviously, how wrestlers feel and the emotions of winning things. The Scramble as well looks fun. I've seen it on the socials and everything. And you have that awesome picture of you holding up the briefcase and a big smile and getting hugs all around. Winning that Scramble and obviously with the briefcase with the opportunity. You mentioned obviously in a promo as well on your Instagram that it's a stepping stone for you getting this championship. Do you feel like this is the key moment of change? This is where you're going to be really cementing yourself with this Scramble win?
I plan to make sure it is. I mean, I can't be sure until a couple of years in the future when we look back in hindsight. But I would very much like to make that the case. But the only way that can be guaranteed is if I continue to work hard and push myself and have matches that I'm proud of and that other people recognize as being good matches, and then I get more work from that and stuff like that. So maybe it will be. I'm going to try and make sure that it is, but it's not the kind of thing I can answer to be sure until a couple of years in the future. But I certainly hope it will be. I've no doubt I'm going to have a really good match with Lucy. We've got good chemistry. We had a match I'm very proud of at Future Shock as well. I'm wrestling her at OTP soon as well. We have good chemistry, and I think we're going to have a great match. And then I'm going to win. And I'm going to take a belt because that's what I'm going to do. That's what the briefcase is for.
Absolutely. And when you win, I'll get the Instagram post ready. I'll get some confetti, champagne to celebrate your victory. It will be an absolute fun time. Of course, obviously, TNT Ignition, No Limit, November 30th, Fusion 17, Fleet Street at Liverpool. Doors are 1:30 p.m. First bell is 2 p.m. Tickets are on schedule. You can get your events there as well. But it's fascinating as well, Helen, because the Ignition Women's Championship, it's fairly new. It's not got its identity yet. Obviously, there's Lucy Sky's a 2-time champion. Casey's held the belt as well. So for yourself, if successful and you're able to defeat Lucy to get that championship around your waist, how would you like to put your own identity on the championship? What would you like to make the TNT Ignition Women's Championship?
That's an interesting question. It's going to be me it's my chance to prove what me as champion is like. This will be my first singles championship. When I kick Lucy's ass and win that belt, but like you've seen me wrestle, my style is fairly unique within the women's division. Not complete, I'm not going to say other people don't, German people and stuff like that. That'd be absurd. But I feel that I offer something genuinely unique, and I'm looking forward to offering that same uniqueness as a champion for a promotion, and just having like really good. I mean, again, I always like going. I think I'm having good matches at the moment, like good ones. I feel like I've definitely turned a corner since the old days, and that what I'm doing is consistently of a high standard. And as champion, I want to be able to prove that with more main event level matches. And in my style, as the unique wrestler that I am, I think I'm going to offer something very, very unique as a promotions champion, and I'm looking forward to that.
I'm very excited to see it as well, Helen. And of course, obviously, TNT have that relationship with GCW, the TNT versus GCW shows. if you are obviously the Ignition Women's Champion at that point, we get maybe another crossover show. Who from the GCW roster would you like to defend the championship against?
Masha or Ali. Masha Slamovic, Ali Catch. Those are the two names that come immediately to mind. I definitely want to go one-on-one with either one of them. Absolutely. Rematch with Sheik would be great. Definitely feel if we rematch now, much better match this time. Yeah.
Oh, hey, truly. I mean, I'm sure everyone will be raving and get to see whatever masterful piece of art you two get to create again, or for future opponents as well. Well, Helen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Soul Sessions. But obviously, before we go, hey, pleasure indeed, my dear. Thank you very much for this. But obviously, sadly, the year's nearly up. 2024 is nearly done. It's crazy to think. I mean, where's the time gone? I thought it was January, like 2 minutes ago. But nonetheless, time always moves forward. I would love to know, what things would you love to achieve in 2025?
Okay, so this year I traveled to the States. Next year, I'd either like to do that again, or I'd like to look towards Japan. That'd be something I would very, very much like to do. I'd love to learn in Japan mainly. I mean, obviously, performing in Japan would be a great step and really important, all that stuff. But I want to get to those schools over there and train. I feel like if I want to get better, then that's one of the best ways to do it. And I always want to get better at wrestling. This is my art form, and maybe I'm supposed to be old school and say that I'm in it for the money, but I'm in it for the art of it. And if I want to get better at the thing that I'm passionate about, then I think Japan would be really important for that. I'd also love to wrestle America again, and obviously expand my name within the UK as well, and get to those promotions. TNT is a huge step in that direction, but I'd like to be working your other, your progresses, your ICWs, travel around the country. I mean, I've already started that. I've worked down south before in London. I've worked Purpose. I've worked up the Iron Girders shows in Glasgow, but I want to make those trips more regular and bigger.
Oh, well, hey, the HCC World Tour coming in 2025. That's what I like to see.
Hopefully, I mean, we'll see. Yeah.
Truly, thank you very much, Helen. You know what? One final thing before we go, we have to. Have you got any words for your opponent, Lucy Sky? Anything you want to say to her before your match?
I mean, I like to think I got my message across in the promo, but she knows how hard I can hit. She knows how far I can fling people, including her. She's not used to that in these kinds of matches, but I will. I will every German she gives me, I can give right back. Every time she throws me, I'll throw her back, and harder. She knows what I'm capable of, and what's important to me, and I think what's important to her, is that we're going to have a hell of a fight. And that's what I really care about, is having a proper good fight. And then I'm going to win that belt because that's what I do.
Right, that's what you do indeed. And we will hear new TNT Women's Ignition Champion, Helen Charlotte Campbell. Oh, I can't even wait to hear that. I can't even wait to hear. Well, Helen, thank you very much for putting on the Soul Session. And of course, folks, if you love what you've heard from Helen, I will put her Instagram down in the description below. Follow her, see her career. And when she wins that title, you can say you were there and saw it in the comments. Well, folks, finish up your pints, put your chairs away, and thank you as always for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions.
Now about the hill and two, gonna live like animals do. No more laws and no more